pre-trip inspection. I want to start at the front. At the top, I want to make sure that my clearance lights and my turn signal lights and my ID lights on the front are not faded, cracked, or broken, and the proper color is amber. I'm checking the headlights to make sure they're not cracked or broken, they're not faded, the proper color is clear or white. Looking under the truck, I want to make sure that there's no oil, coolant, or power steering fluid leaks. You can edit that out, can't you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Alright, over here on this side. First thing I want to check my exhaust right here. I want to make sure it's securely mounted. I want to make sure that the clamps are tight, no loose or missing nuts or bolt, and I'm checking to make sure that there's no rust holes or soot, which would indicate a leak. Here's where I would check my oil. Right here's where I would add my oil. Right up here, since I don't have a sight glass or a clear reservoir, with the engine off and cool, this is where I would check my coolant level, and this is where I would add coolant. Right here is my belt-driven alternator. I want to make sure it's securely mounted to the motor. It's not cracked or broken, no loose or missing nuts or bolts. I want to check to make sure that my wires are tight, the nuts are tight, and they're making good contact. I want to make sure that my belt, I want to make sure it's not cut, cracked, or frayed, and I want to make sure that there is no more than 3/4 inch deflection. Right here is the gear-driven water pump, securely mounted to the motor, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, it's not cracked or broken, and I see no visible coolant leaks. My coolant lines right here and here, I want to make sure that they're secure. I want to make sure my clamps are tight, and I want to make sure that there's no visible coolant leaks. Over here on this side, I want to make sure that my wires are all properly secured. I don't have any exposed wires, any cut, or missing insulation. Over here, I want to check my gear-driven power steering pump. I want to make sure it's securely mounted to the motor, not cracked or broken, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, and there's no visible power steering fluid leaks. I also want to check my power steering fluid lines. I want to make sure that they're not dry rotted, they're not cracked, cut, the fittings are tight, and there's no visible power steering fluid leaks. This is the power steering fluid reservoir. This is where I would check and add power steering fluid. Right here is my gear-driven air compressor. It's securely mounted to the motor, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, it's not cracked or broken. I have no audible air leaks as well. I don't have any visible coolant leaks or oil leaks. Right here, I'm going to check my steering gearbox. I want to make sure that it's securely mounted to the frame, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, it's not cracked or broken, and I have no visible power steering fluid leaks. These are the components of my steering system. Here, 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 and down here. I want to make sure that none are twisted, cracked, broken. I want to make sure there's no shiny metal, which would indicate looseness, and I want to make sure that the castle nuts are all present and are all tight, and the cotter keys are in place. This is my leaf spring hangers on the back and the front. I want to check to make sure that they're securely mounted to the frame. They're not cracked or broken. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. I want to check my leaf springs to make sure none are shifted, cracked, broken, or missing. I want to check my leaf spring U-bolts. I want to make sure that they're tight, and I want to make sure that the nuts on the bottom are all tight and present. Checking the shock absorber, I want to make sure it's securely mounted to the frame and to the axle. There's no loose or missing nuts or bolts. It's not cracked or broken, and I have no visible leaks. I want to check my air line, going to my brake chamber. I'm checking to make sure that the fittings are tight. It's not dry rotted, cracked, cut, no audible air leaks. I'm checking my brake chamber. It's securely mounted to the axle. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. My clamp is tight. It's not bent. It's not damaged. No audible air leaks. I'm going to check the slack adjuster and my push rod. I want to check to make sure that they're securely mounted to the axle. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. They're not cracked or broken. And I also want to make sure that I have no more than 1 inch of free travel in the push rod. Alright, checking the brake shoes. Both brake shoes, I want to make sure that my return springs are secure, and I want to make sure there's no oil or grease contamination, and I want to make sure I have no less than 1/4 inch of pad thickness. Right here's the brake drum. I want to make sure there's no abnormal wear. I want to make sure that it's not cracked, bent, or broken. Alright, you can come back out.
Whoa, okay. Bloop, bloop, bloop. All right, where are you going next?
Alright, tires.
Okay.
Alright, I want to check my tires, the sidewalls first. I'm checking to make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts in the sidewalls. I want to make sure that I have even tread wear across the surface of the tire, and I want to make sure that I have no less than 4/32 tread depth. And right here is where I would check my air with an air gauge, and this is where I would add air if I needed it. Alright, checking the rim. I want to make sure there's no illegal welds. I want to make sure it's not cracked, bent, or broken. I want to check my lug nuts, making sure that they're all tight, they're all present. Rust trails or shiny threads will be indicators of loose lug nuts. Right here I want to check the hub oil seal to make sure that it is not leaking. Lights here all the way back, and my turn signal light, I want to make sure that they're not faded, cracked, or broken, and the proper color is amber. Now I'm going to check my mirror. Checking the mirror to make sure it's secure. There's no loose or missing nuts or bolts, and the frame is not damaged in any way. I want to make sure my mirror glass is not cracked, broken. I want to make sure it's clean and free of illegal stickers. I want to check my door to make sure it opens and closes properly, and I want to make sure that the hinges are secure and the door is securely fastened to the truck. I want to make sure that my rubber seal is intact and seals properly. I want to check the steps here. I want to make sure that it's securely mounted to the frame, no loose and missing nuts or bolts, and it's free of obstructions. The exhaust, I want to check my exhaust to make sure it's securely mounted to the tractor. I want to make sure that there's no rust or no soot, which would indicate leaks. In the side box here, I would like to check to make sure that I have 3 reflective triangles, a properly rated fire extinguisher with a needle in the green, and I want to make sure that I have spare fuses, but this truck operates off of circuit breakers. The fuel tank, I want to make sure first that it's not leaking. I want to make sure it's securely mounted to the frame. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. It's not dented, it's not cracked, it's not damaged. I want to make sure that this rubber backing prevents metal-to-metal contact. Right here I want to make sure that my fuel cap is secure and seals properly. Right here I want to check my catwalk and my steps. I want to make sure that they're securely mounted to the frame. They're not cracked or broken, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, and they're free of obstructions. I want to check my frame to make sure that it's not cracked or broken, it's not bent. I want to make sure there's no loose or missing nuts or bolts. I want to check the drive shaft to make sure it's securely mounted to the rear end and to the transmission. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. It's not twisted, cracked, or broken, and there's no foreign objects hung or twisted into the drive shaft. All right, working on the airlines here. I'm going to check my emergency airline and my service airline. I want to make sure that where it's connected to the tractor, that the fittings are tight and free of audible air leaks. I want to check my electrical line here. I want to make sure that it's properly locked in place and seated. I want to check my air lines and my electrical lines. I want to make sure that they're not faded, cracked, cut. I want to make sure in the air lines there's no audible air leaks. And I want to check my electrical line. I want to make sure that it's not cut, cracked, there's no exposed wire. And I want to check my glad hands here at the trailer to make sure that the seals are not cracked, cut, no audible air leaks. And I want to make sure that my electrical line is locked in place and properly seated to the trailer. I also want to make sure that all my lines are properly suspended and not touching any part of the frame. While I'm here, I want to go ahead and check my bulkhead. I want to make sure it's not dented, there's no holes, there's no missing or loose rivets. And I want to make sure that my clearance slide up there is not faded, cracked, or broken, and the proper color is amber. While I'm here, I'm going to check my airline, go into my sliding fifth wheel and make sure that it's properly mounted, no loose or missing parts. I want to make sure there's no audible air leaks. I'm going to check my leaf spring hanger. I'm going to check my leaf springs. I'm going to check the U-bolts and the shock absorber just like I did the front. Over here, you probably have to come over here.
Let me come around that other side.
Well, I can climb up on this. This is what I usually do when I have students here. All right. I'm going to check my air line, go into my brake chamber. I'm going to check my brake chamber. I'm going to check my slack adjuster and my push rod just like I did the front. I'm also going to check, it's covered by a dust cover, but this is where I would check my brake shoes and my brake drums just like I did the front. Checking my tires, checking my sidewalls, the condition of my sidewalls like I did the front. I want to check this bud spacing. I want to check to make sure that my tires aren't touching one another. I want to make sure that they're properly seated together. I see no daylight between my rims, and I want to make sure I have no foreign objects hung between my tires. Also want to make sure that check my treads. I want to make sure that I have a minimum of 2 30-seconds tread depth. 4 30-seconds for the steer tires, 2 30-seconds minimum on all other tires. Right here I want to check my rim, and I want to check my lug nuts just like I did the front. I'm going to check my axle seal. I want to check to make sure that it's not leaking, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, it's not damaged. Right here, I want to check the DOT reflective tape down the trailer, make sure none of it's missing or faded. Right here, I want to check my airbag. I would check it. I'll check to make sure it's securely mounted to the frame and to the axle, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, not damaged. I want to make sure that my bag is not dry rotted, cracked, cut, no audible air leaks. And I would check this axle just like I did that axle. We got some stuff up here. Right here, I want to check my trailer apron. I want to make sure that it's not damaged, it's not bent, cracked, broken, no broken welds. I want to make sure there's no gap between my trailer apron and my fifth wheel sliding plate. I want to make sure the fifth wheel sliding plate is properly greased, it's not damaged, the pin is in place, no, it's not cracked or broken. I want to make sure that my fifth wheel release handle is all the way in and in the lock position. Right here, I want to check my sliding fifth wheel locking pins. I want to make sure they're both locked in the lock position. My fifth wheel platform here, I want to make sure it's not bent, it's not damaged, it's securely mounted to the frame, no broken wheels. I want to make sure that my platform mounting bolts are all tight. Shiny threads, rust trails would indicate loose nuts, just like they would on the rim. securely mounted to the frame, no loose or missing nuts or bolts. I want to make sure that the mud flap is the proper length. It's not cut, no holes. Now we got to climb up under here. I want to make sure that my locking jaws are locked around the shank of my kingpin, and I want to make sure my kingpin is not cracked, bent, or damaged in any way, and it's securely mounted to the trailer apron. Coming back here, my rear reflectors and my tail lights, I want to make sure that they're not faded, cracked, or broken and the proper color is red. And I want to check the backup light to make sure it's not faded, cracked, or broken and the proper color is clear or white. Up here, I'm going to check the floor of my trailer all the way back. I want to make sure there's no holes, it's not damaged. I want to check the frame to make sure it's not bent. I want to make sure these cross members, none are shifted, cracked, broken, or missing, and they're securely mounted to the trailer frame. My landing gear, I want to make sure that my vertical landing gear legs are not damaged, bent, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, securely mounted to the frame. I want to make sure that the cross members, no broken welds, not cracked, bent, or broken, and the sand shoes are securely mounted and not damaged. That my landing gear is raised all the way up. I want to make sure that my landing gear crank handle is properly stowed in the low speed position or in, and I want to make sure it's not damaged. I want to check this turn signal light. I want to make sure that it's not faded, cracked, or broken and the proper color is amber. I want to check this reflector to make sure it's not faded, cracked, or broken and the proper color is red. Back under the trailer again. All right. I'm going to check my leaf spring hangers here. I'm going to check the leaf springs. I'm going to check the U-bolts just like I did the front. Right here is a torsion bar. I want to check to make sure it's securely mounted to the spring hangers and to the axle. No loose or missing nuts or bolts. It's not cracked, bent, broken, not damaged. I want to make sure that my fifth wheel or my sliding tandem release handle is all the way in and in the lock position, and my pins are out on both sides and not damaged. Right here, I want to check my air lines going to my brake chamber. I want to check the brake chamber, the slack adjuster, and the push rod, just like the front. Alright, I'm going to check my tires. I'm going to check the inflation, the condition, and the tread depth. Tread depth's minimum 230 seconds. I'm going to check my butt spacing like I did the front. I'm going to check the rim. I'm going to check the lug nuts like I did the front. I'm going to check the axle seal like I did the front. I'll check this rim, this axle, just like I did this axle. Checking this mud flap. Securely mounted to the frame, no loose or missing nuts or bolts, just the proper length, not cut, no holes. I'll check this marker light, not faded, cracked, or broken, and the proper color is red. Now that I'm back here, I want to check my doors. I want to make sure that they're not damaged. My hinges are not cracked or broken. I want to make sure that my doors open and close properly. And I want to make sure that my rubber seals seal properly. I want to check to make sure that the DOT reflective tape is not cracked, dry rotted, or missing. Now you can definitely edit that part out. I don't even know where half the stuff's coming from. I want to check the tail lights and the ID lights. I want to make sure they're not faded, cracked, or broken, and the proper color is red. I want to check the tag light to make sure that it's not faded, cracked, or broken, and the proper color is clear or white. And I would check this side of the truck just like I did the other side. this part right here, I guess you can edit out, because all I'm doing is coming up here. I'm about to drop the hood.
Oh, okay.
We can go ahead and get the truck now.
Okay.
Now that I'm inside the truck, I want to check my mirrors to make sure that they're properly adjusted for me. I want to check the windshield to make sure it's not chipped, cracked, or broken. I want to check my windshield wipers to make sure that there's proper tension against the windshield and the blades aren't dry rotted, cracked, or cut. I want to check my seat belt and make sure that it's not dry rotted, cracked, cut. It's securely mounted to the wall and securely mounted to the floor. And I want to make sure that it latches properly. But you can see that it won't latch. That's why it sits here. All right, going to do a safe start now. Clutch all the way in, making sure my brakes are set. Turn the ignition over. Crank the truck. Shut that door.
Yeah.
A little bit quieter. Alright. Now that the truck's cranked, I want to make sure that my ABS light comes on and goes off. I want to check my water temp. It's at 100 and climbing. I want to check my oil pressure. It's at 50. I want to check my primary air is at about 80. My secondary air is about 80 and climbing. I want to check my volts. They're at 14. I want to check my air horn. Check my city horn. Beep. I want to turn on my windshield wipers. I want to make sure that they work on intermittent, low, and high. And I want to push the button to make sure the windshield washers work correctly. Now I want to check to make sure that my air or my heat is working properly. Defrost, it's on high. I'm going to reach up here and I'm feeling to make sure that the air is blowing. Now I'm going to turn on the heat and I want to make sure that my heater is working properly. Now to check the service brakes, I would get the truck up to 5 miles per hour across the parking lot and step down on the service brake pedal and hold the steering wheel lightly and make sure that the truck doesn't go to the left or right and comes to a complete stop. Then I would get the truck up to 5 miles per hour again across the parking lot and pull back on the trailer hand valve to make sure that the service brakes on the trailer are working properly. Now I'm going to check to make sure that my parking brakes are working. Clutch in, first gear, releasing my trailer brakes. And I'm going to ease out on the clutch and tug to make sure that my tractor parking brakes are working. Now I'm going to set my trailer brakes, release my tractor brakes, and do the same thing again. Sorry about that. To make sure that the trailer parking brakes are working properly. Alright, now I'm going to do a 1, 2, 3 brake check. I'm turning my engine off and my ignition back on. Now right here, I'm releasing my brakes. Releasing both my brakes. Now with my foot off of the brake pedal, I want to lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure in 1 minute. With my foot on the brake pedal, I want to lose no more than 4 pounds of pressure in 1 minute. I want to start pumping the brakes, and I want to make sure that my low air warning indicators come on at 60 psi, and there it is. I want to continue pumping, and I want to make sure that my valves pop out between 20 and 45 psi. There you go. There's one. And there's 2. And that completes the 1, 2, 3 brake check. Alright. I'm going to check my left turn signal, my right turn signal, my 4-way flashers. Then I'm going to turn on my lights, and I'm going to make sure that my high beams are working properly. Got my lights on. I'm going to turn on my 4-way flashers, then we'll get out and we do the walking around and checking the lights. Alright. Making sure that my clearance lights are working. My 4-way flashers on the mirror and the fenders are working on both sides. My ID lights are working on both sides. Checking to make sure that my headlights are working. Making sure that clearance light's working. Making sure that the 4-way flashers and the tail lights are working on the tractor. Checking to make sure this 4-way light, the flasher's working. Checking to make sure that this marker light's working, or clearance light, marker light. Checking to make sure that my 4-way flashers are working here. My tail lights are working properly. My ID lights and my tag lights working. Making sure this marker light's working. Making sure this turn signal light's working. Making sure the clearance light's working. This turn signal light's working. These marker lights are working here on the side. Right turn signal working here. Right turn signal light and tail lights working on the back of the tractor, my trailer. Almost done. Left turn signal and tail lights working on the back of the tractor. Left turn signal working here. Left turn signal and tail lights working on the back of the trailer. Last thing coming up. brake lights are working on the back of the tractor. And the brake lights are working on the back of the trailer. I'm done.